How much do you make,
that
Hasan?
wouldn't necessarily even push the needle. I will be very honest. It's really embarrassing, especially because my boss is sitting right there. I make $60,000 a year, okay? And that's besides the point, okay? You're trying to attack me, which is ridiculous, like asking me what my salary is. Sure, I'll reveal it willingly.
You brought it up in context. I'm asking, why don't you live like a socialist?
Okay.
Go live like a socialist.
The point is larger. The point is larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Cenk. I live as a capitalist, okay? I live what I believe. What do I do? I get dirty every single year.
Hold on.
What's my salary? Less than his.
Charlie, take a seat.
Let's go.
Charlie,
What are you doing?
take a seat. Take a seat.
Psycho?
All right, no. Take a seat. You're going to take a seat. You're going to take a seat over here.
Oh, my God.
What's my salary?
All right.
Ridiculous. All right, behave, everyone. Jesus Christ.
Okay.
I practice what I preach, Cenk.
Charlie.
You do not practice what you preach.
Charlie.
All right, hold on. Last point.
You don't want to give him the attention
Exactly.
here.
Everyone,
35,000 donors across the country, my friend Cenk. We are funded by the grassroots of this country. You can try to demagogue it all you want.
This debate gets a little bit out of hand. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that and hit the thumbs up button. Strap in. You're really going to enjoy this one.
Currently, the economic system that we're living under is inherently exploitative, it's inherently oppressive, and we're now actually feeling the devastating impact of that more than ever. We live in a country where there are 40 million Americans. We live in the wealthiest nation that has ever existed, the wealthiest nation on the planet, and we have 40 million Americans living in poverty. We have 18.5 million Americans living in extreme poverty, according to the latest UN reports. Climate change is happening no matter how hard people try to deny its existence.
So the climate change argument is a contradiction because if we're creating more industry because of capitalism, then that would be an argument that the economy is better under capitalism.
Its outcomes are devastating, especially for millennials, and this is something that we need to focus on. And unfortunately, every single time we try to bring about any sort of socialized solutions to these problems that the free market obviously fails to provide solutions for, we get called socialist, and that idea is inherently damaging. We live under an inherently oppressive capitalist dogma, and I'm here to talk about that because I think that at least questioning that and striving to find a better system is exactly what young people should be doing right now.
Right. So, inherently oppressive. So, small business owners are oppressing their employees?
Come on, you're hyper-focusing on small business, dog. I'm talking about capitalism versus socialism.
Even though 85% of all jobs in this country are created by small businesses, even though
Why are
under
you
this
trying
president, poverty rates have gone to the lowest level in the last 65 years.
Do you want to ask questions? Wait, hold on.
Let me finish. I let you finish, right?
Okay, go ahead.
Let me finish. 3.9 million Americans have gone off food stamps and into the labor force under this president. That should be applauded by everybody. When less people have to go to government for money and for meaning, and they instead are able to go to a job and have a paycheck, that's a good thing. And so the final thing I'll say is this, and you'll find disagreement. Just because someone gets rich does not mean someone gets poor. In order for you to get rich in a free market system, you must have a good idea. You must create value. You must employ people. You probably borrowed money. And you have an 80% chance of that business not succeeding. In a free market, yes, we applaud success, but you must take responsibility for failure. And you have seen in the last 100 years the standard of living increase for all people across the world. Things get better, prices go down, and we are able to enjoy the abundance that only a free market system can create. And you know what? I don't have to call you guys socialists. Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist, and we should reject socialism.
Yeah, no, we should. Yeah. It's very nice of you to immediately launch this accusation that I don't care for small businesses, or small businesses will never exist under a social democracy, kind of similar to small businesses in Nordic countries and with robust economies, but with also a powerful and protective social welfare programs and socialized safety nets. This exists everywhere around the world. All of the comparable Western democratic nations have been able to institute socialist principles, and that's precisely why their people are a lot happier. But then on top of that, what's really important to me is focusing on the rate of growth and the GDP is great, but you can't answer this one simple question. Who cares what our GDP is if the person who is dying of abject poverty can't heal himself because we don't have a socialized medicine, for example?
So if you want to talk about healthcare solutions, happy to talk about it. You brought up Norway, Sweden, Finland. You would call those socialist countries?
No, I wouldn't call them socialist countries,
okay,
but they're definitely on a scale. Yeah, I said they're social democracies, which would be a more socialist country. Look, if we're going to have this conversation, let's frame it.
I asked a very simple question.
No, we'll have a consensus on this first.
For the record, the U.S. military budget is $1 trillion. Norway's military budget is less than $2 billion US dollars. So yes, Norway has a little extra money to spend on its citizens when they don't have to spend it protecting the rest of the world.
Let me ask you a question, okay? Because this is like really improper framing, and a lot of people confuse socialism.
You said inherently exploitative. You framed the argument.
Oh, with capitalism, yeah, I did.
Okay, so that's,
yeah.
And I rebutted that. So
how did you rebut that?
By talking about just because
no, by talking about like what, small businesses? It doesn't matter. Every single business
Hasan,
still
let me say one thing.
Norway,
Sweden, and Finland, according to the World Economic Freedom Index, are ranked higher than the United States of America. That is not socialist. They have less tax. They have lower taxes.
So that means that you can have socialism and yet still have successful businesses in your country. Thank you for proving my point for me.
No,
I love this.
It's the exact opposite. You know what socialist is? Bernie Sanders wants an 80% tax rate on the rich.
Venezuela too, right? Dude, listen.
Bernie Sanders wants to keep our fossil fuel assets in the road.
You want me to explain it to you? Because you obviously don't understand it. Do you want me to explain it to you?
Is Cuba not socialist? Is North Korea not socialist? Was Vietnam not socialist? Was Zimbabwe not socialist? You can laugh all you want, Hasan,
okay,
but 100 million people died under socialism in the last 100 years, and you have the gumption to continue.
Okay.
You can keep laughing to the victims' families from Cuba, from Venezuela, from Korea, from Vietnam, from Mao's China, from Stalin's Russia. The number one killer of citizens, from innocent civilians in the last 100 years, has been the very idea that you shamelessly wear on your sleeve every single day. Marxism has killed more people than any other ideology over the last 100 years.
Okay. Thank you for those words.
You're welcome.
When 100 million people die under a communist dictatorship, and some of those millions are also Nazis, which is included there, whatever, you blame communism.
The National Socialist Workers Party?
Or you blame socialism. But when 7 million people die every year under our current global capitalist environment, where just by famine alone, before we even talk about imperialism, and before we even talk about the damaging wars that are happening all around the world, then it's the individual. So you're essentially telling every single person that's poor, it's your fault that you're poor, it's your fault that you die under a capitalist system, but if you were under a communist system...
I have never said that.
I mean, that's literally what you're saying.
No, it's not.
So whose fault is it? Whose fault is it that 7 million people every year die just by famine-related diseases and famine under our current global capitalist structure?
Whose individual fault is it?
Yeah. Why is it with the system when it comes to communism, but it's actually...
That number's been going down over time. And of course, there is no A/B testing here because he's saying a global system. So we don't have another Earth where the majority of the planet is practicing socialism. For all we know, there could be 700 million people dying a year if we didn't have a capitalist system.
Go from 40 years to 80 years in America for women and 76 years for women.
You're not answering my question.
Global poverty is at its all-time low than it ever has been. It's dropped below 10%.
You're not answering my question. You're not answering. You're talking about something
There is not a
completely
singular
different.
person why individuals might die, unfortunately. However, what's going to stop that?
It's unfortunate when they die.
Oh, yes, yes, Hasan. Death is unfortunate.
Yeah, I know. I understand. But you make it seem as though they are just a statistic.
How do you solve that? So let's talk about healthcare in particular.
Okay.
Because a common critique of conservatives is that we do not have a plan for healthcare. It's quite simple. First of all, the idea that we do not have socialized medicine or a test case for it in the States is incorrect. The Veterans Administration.
Did you say the veterans? Oh, God.
$180 billion a year.
How disgusting.
We spend trying to help our veterans. Hasan, let me finish. $180 billion a year we spend trying to help our veterans. And they wait in line, they die in the clinics, the quality care is unbelievably low. You cannot say that the Veterans Administration is a well-run government agency despite us spending $180 billion a year trying to help our vets.
How disgusting that you would send these young men and women overseas to go fight not you, I'm talking about conservatives in general. Just conservatives in general don't mind sending these young men and women overseas to fight imperialist conquests that have nothing to do with protecting America or protecting American sovereignty. Hold on, that's great, that's great. That's just one war, though. We're waging many currently. But then they come back, and the numbers have obviously increased. The number of casualties have increased. The treatment is drastically different than a regular pool of American citizens who aren't in the line of fire. How could you then turn around, not fund that system that we promised those veterans we would take care of them, not fund that system, and then use it as a talking point to say socialized medicine does not work? That is disgusting.
We should take care of our vets. You know what's disgusting, Hasan? The fact that you defend that system. The fact that vets die waiting for care. Our vets are our heroes. First of all, I'm against the Afghanistan war, against the Iraq war, against our funding of Saudi Arabia's illegal war in Yemen. I'm against the missile strikes in Syria. So don't try to paint me in the same blend and the same brush that all neoconservatives are. Second of all, ironically, Donald Trump is making the world a safer place. The Korean War is ending thanks to Donald Trump. ISIS is on the run and being destroyed.
What does this have to do with us lying to our veterans that we were going to take care of them and then letting them be homeless on the streets,
which is socialized medicine. the Veterans Administration, which is socialized medicine, does a disservice. You advocate for socialized medicine. I do not want the rest of the country.
I'm not saying the VA is good. I'm saying that it's underfunded.
That our veterans have to
You're using that as a tool to just attack socialism.
No, a piece of evidence.
Medicine.
It's called evidence.
This works
Hasan.
in every other country that has tried to do this. This works. The system absolutely
Cuba?
works.
How does the Cuban healthcare system work?
The Cuban healthcare
system.
The Cuban healthcare system? Oh, you mean the country where they're on the verge of solving AIDS and a multitude of different cancer research? Like, what are you talking about?
Where their life expectancy is 15 years, less than the United States, where they have widespread starvation, where they lock up political dissidents.
Okay.
Why do people flee Havana, Cuba for Miami, Florida?
I don't know.
They
Maybe
don't
our
flee
sanctions
Miami,
have
Florida
something to do with
for
it?
Havana, Cuba.
Okay,
maybe it's because people did not want to willingly give away their land. But I'm not here defending Cuba. I don't give a shit about Cuba, dog. I'm talking about America.
No, you just
talking
said
about
they're solving
nations,
AIDS, which is
I'm talking about
categorically
comparable
false.
nations. We are talking about socialized medicine in comparable nations. Are you going to say that America and Cuba are virtually identical? I think that Canada is a better example, and there are definitely problems within the Canadian healthcare system. Again, due to privatization and due to underfunding and crippling the institution from within because of privatized policies. This is all private enterprise is grossly responsible for the lack of affordable healthcare in this country. It shouldn't even be affordable. It should be free. This is what the people want.
Nothing is free, Hasan.
82% of Americans.
It's not private enterprise, though.
82% of Americans want Medicare for all. 52% of Republicans want Medicare for all. The only people at this point, the only people who are standing firmly against Medicare for all are just essentially saying, look, I don't care. I love corporate lobbyists. I think big pharma should continue to increase their profits. And it doesn't matter if you can't live a dignified life without the crippling fear that if you lose your job, you might lose your health care and you might literally die. And if you can't fund your medicine, if you can't fund your health care, then you should beg on the internet through crowdsourcing.
Again, Hasan, you are virtue signaling constantly because you are implying that just because I have a different policy perspective, that I care less about these people.
I mean,
the free market system.
If you're against it, that's what you want.
So in every single sector and vertical, allow me to finish.
Okay, you want private
housing,
more.
whether it be in food, whether it be in anywhere the free market is allowed to interact, which we do not have a free market system in healthcare right now. You cannot buy health insurance across state lines. We have a national quota for doctors. We have the FDA that disallows entrepreneurs to compete against big pharma by having patents for 30 years so that people with great ideas.
Do you think FDA regulation is bad when it comes to medicine? There are certain elements of regulation that is bad, but I want you to be very specific. No, you can't just throw 8 different points.
Let me finish. How about a 30-year patent on a drug that disallows someone with a better idea that would bring down the price of the drug so that the middle class could have the same sort of treatment that the rich and powerful have?
That's the regulation that you think I'm against?
So I originally made all of these points before he made them, and I pulled them all out because I said these points, and then Charlie just went ahead and made them, and he obviously was better at it. So.
No, I'm not saying you're against it. I'm saying what I'm for, Hasan.
I think we should look.
Again, let me finish.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, you're right.
The free market allows itself to three really, really big things. It allows prices to go down, quality to go up, and abundance to go outward. Everywhere it's tried, whether it be grocery stores, whether it be housing, the laws of the market do not stop working just because it's in healthcare. Whether it be LASIK eye surgery used to cost $20,000 per eye.
Not covered by insurance.
Insurance companies.
Technological advancements that are
because of the free market.
More affordable.
The insurance companies would not cover the LASIK eye surgery.
Ridiculous.
It was a cash business. Doctors went outside of the traditional system, and all of a sudden now it costs $500 per eye for LASIK eye surgery.
Everything you're saying is flat out false. And also,
what's false about
because
that?
Because we live under a mixed economy, Charlie, so it's a consequence of both publicly funded research and also certain private elements. So when you try to turn around and look at technological advancements that are happening in virtually every field, okay? Virtually every field on an international scale, and assume that this is just a consequence of free market capitalism, well, let's talk. Yeah, no, it's actually unicorns, dude. Unicorns are giving us magically the
Hasan, answer me a question.
If we're going to lie about this stuff, then we might as well just go all the way out.
Does insurance cover LASIK?
Does insurance cover
LASIK?
What does that have to do with anything?
Because when you don't have the insurance lobby within the negotiating of prices, then the consumer knows exactly what everything costs. The reason why healthcare costs so much in this country, you go into a hospital, no one knows what anything costs. No one knows what anything costs for how long you stay there, for how long the procedure is. A key component of a market is pricing.
Yeah.
The problem with the system we have
and we
now,
live in a country that is virtually the only country on the planet that does not negotiate drug prices. Even Donald Trump said he was going to do this, and he's failed to deliver on that promise, among many other promises, like he was going to solve the economy or that he was going to bring about world peace. Like, this is preposterous to assume that, like, insurance, you could just unjustifiably just throw out a claim without expecting me to, I can't even talk, holy shit, refute it. When you say when you make this ridiculous assertion that insurance companies are actually decreasing prices when it's not the government
No, they're
who
not.
should be regulating
Hasan, I asked a very specific question.
What?
LASIK eye surgery,
then you
not covered by insurance.
Okay.
Consumers went straight to the doctor, so they knew how much it cost. Therefore, prices went down, quality went up, and accessibility went outward. That's what happens when a market is allowed to exist.
So why is it in virtually every other...
Now, I'm considering getting LASIK for one reason. I shouldn't have to get my eyes tested every single 6 months by some obstetrician.
You must be so embarrassed.
Not an obstetrician, that's the pregnancy person. Optometrist, by some optometrist in the state that's licensed in the state, and then have to upload all these documents showing that I went and saw one, and then so that they have an opportunity to sell me some overpriced glasses and some overpriced contact lenses. And why can't I buy contact lenses off of Facebook Marketplace? I mean, I'm not even allowed to sell a wheelchair anymore. A wheelchair, perfectly functioning, perfectly working. You're not allowed to sell wheelchairs on Facebook Marketplace. The medical field is nowhere close to a free market.
Because I don't know the ins and outs of the complicated LASIK surgery, and I'm willing to bet that you don't either. You just know a talking point about it, but it doesn't matter. Look, none of this matters because you are hyper-focusing on LASIK surgery. Are all Americans, is this the most important problem that all Americans have to face when it comes to our current obesity
I'm really glad you asked.
when it comes to the cancer rate in the U.S.,
Hasan,
which is good, we're good on cancer, if you can afford it.
So how do you get things to cost less? Competition, which is inherent in a free market.
Regulation.
Raises prices. Regulation prices out middle-class consumers. Regulation is a tool used by corporations to go after small
100%.
business owners. That is why the biggest
the
corporation...
small business owner like Pfizer. You're right, dude. Come on,
Pfizer has a $100 million a year government lobbying budget. That is
I
not
hate
right.
that.
Yeah, regulation that makes car seats go expired every 2 or 3 years, so you have to buy a new one.
We agree on that.
That is corporatism.
Yeah.
That is not capitalism. It's different when you have a good idea versus buying lobbyists, sending them to D.C., saying put all these rules and regulations that I can afford, but the entrepreneur from Silicon Valley that has a 5-person company cannot afford $20
So why is
million
it cheaper in other countries, Charlie? Explain that to me. If it's not government price negotiations, why is it cheaper in virtually every other country? As a matter of fact, this is
Because they don't have regulations. They don't have protectionism happening in those other countries. The Indian government has banned imports of used clothing to protect their native textile industry. So if you're a clothing reseller in India, a small business, you're not able to import your goods and resell them. You can't buy like Gaylords of clothing and then resell them locally. Does that make any sense? Is that a free market?
This is a ridiculous talking point because, like, conservatives, for the most part, maybe not Charlie, but I am willing to hear your perspective on this. Conservatives, for the most part, have, like, completely decided that the whole regulation conversation is ridiculous and have gone so far as to say that we are subsidizing healthcare for the rest of the world because we are the most innovative nation when it comes to medicine. It's preposterous. Every other nation is able to do this, and these companies are still selling to them. Obviously, they're not selling out of the goodness of their heart because there's no such thing. It's all profit motive, right? So they're capable of lowering drug prices here in the United States as well. But the only reason why they won't, and you're correct on this, I will tell you, because obviously I'm very anti-lobby here and anti-corporatist and anti-capitalist as well, which, by the way, lobbying is inherently a capitalist structure. You constantly talk about how money is...
Corporatist. There's difference.
Okay, corporatist and capitalist. Like, you can't... the two go hand in hand.
Those are not the same thing. That's like saying I'm...
Crony capitalism is just unfettered capitalism, and you are constantly, on the one hand, arguing against regulation, and then on the other hand saying, well, it's not true capitalism.
Okay.
Which one is it? Should we regulate capitalism so it doesn't turn into crony capitalism?
I think we should massively deregulate the American economy. I'm not saying to abolish every single piece of regulation. But when regulations... specifically?
Let me finish. Except for, like, the patent one, which I'm on board with as well.
What regulation specifically? How about Dodd-Frank? That'd be a great start. That disallows community banks from competing against Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan Chase. The big banks wrote Dodd-Frank. That is why we've seen an 80% decrease in community banks over the last 8 years since the passage of Dodd-Frank, because it makes it nearly impossible for community banks to be able to compete against the Wall Street banks. I will say this.
What Charlie fails to mention with Dodd-Frank is like...
I did not interrupt you.
No, what Charlie fails to mention with Dodd-Frank, and you can't say this and not mention this part, there are plenty of fail-safes within Dodd-Frank, which was imperfect, I will admit. There are plenty of fail-safes that were also taken away. For example, the fiduciary responsibility. So if you're an old person and you go up to a bank, that your banker can virtually make any sort of risky financial decision they want to now because they took that away so that the bankers could make more money off of your money that they're playing around with. This is the kind of deregulation that already caused the 2008 housing
market
crash.
I'm not going to get into this.
No, you're not going to
Fannie
get
and
into
Freddie
the
rating
when
agencies,
I know what the fuck
Federal
you're talking
Reserve,
about?
Federal Reserve lowering,
whatever,
Federal Reserve
dude.
lowering interest rates. Hold on, what's Fannie and Freddie, genius? What's Fannie and Freddie? Tell me what that is. Tell me about the rating agencies.
Okay.
Tell me about how we should have allowed Wells Fargo to pay a price, and those people should be in prison right now for doing what they did.
I agree.
And lying to federal regulators.
Charlie
and it was,
sounds like
and it
a
was
communist to
Democrat
me.
Congress and a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president.
Advocating
that
to
did
jail
not-
bankers,
Hassan,
I'm on board, dog. Let's
we
do
just
it
keep
right
on talking
now.
over each other for the next 45 minutes, or you can let me finish. The final thing I'll say on banking regulation, one of the biggest misrepresentations of reality is somehow that free market capitalism contributed to the 2008 financial crisis. It was the rating agencies in bed with Fannie and Freddie Mac doing AAA bond rating with B and B minus rated bonds. No one looked what they were actually rating. It was the government institutions that were telling Wall Street to continue to go after subprime mortgage lending, where they did credit default swaps on top of it, leveraging the entire American economy, with Alan Greenspan artificially lowering interest rates after 9/11, playing with cheap money. Pair that with the Community Reinvestment Act, and no one actually knowing what they're trading.
I don't like liberal
all
behavior, dog.
certified
We're on the same page.
by Washington.
We're on the same page, but you sound a lot like a communist when you make those points. I'm just going to let you know. When you're like, let's jail bankers, let's regulate both our politicians and also these corporations. You can't just sit here and say that it's regulation.
Hasan,
you keep mentioning the failures of capitalism, and then your solution to the failures of capitalism is more capitalism, more free market.
Failure of statism. Well, you know how about the successes of free market capitalism? The fact that we have abundance in light, air conditioning. The fact that we have more food that we throw away every single year than we actually eat. The fact that in the Western world...
You think that's a good thing? You think that our waste is a good thing, dude?
We have an abundance problem in the West, not a scarcity problem.
Yeah.
In Venezuela, the average Venezuelan has lost 17 pounds. Oh, yes? 4,000% inflation. Yes. Brink on the Civil War.
Venezuela,
yes.
the only socialist country on the planet, everybody.
Yes. The fact they have 42% unemployment. Yes. The fact that Maduro continues to exploit his citizens around the lies of Karl Marx. Yes. Is that what we're talking about, Hasan?
Yes. I love that you think you owned... Oh, my God.
First of all, can I just stop you guys?
Hold on. No, you can't just let him...
Okay, all right.
You can't just let him throw away the Republican Despacito, which is every single time the dirty S word is mentioned, he's like, oh, Venezuela. Dude,
all right, I'll give you
I get it. You can't. No. You got to let me talk. You got to let me talk. You did your dance, and you said Venezuela. You got it out, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. It's the ultimate defense. Like I said, Venezuela has virtually the same Venezuela has socialized its extraction industries, which is why it is extremely comparable to a Nordic country like Norway. If socialism successfully is implemented, or at least social democracies are successfully implemented in countries like Norway, then some countries fail because they're corrupt or because of currency mismanagement or because of a variety of different reasons like the IMF or American sanctions or even backing military coups in the country, which Donald Trump, apparently the world leader in peace, is toying around with, as if that has worked ever in Latin American countries or anywhere worldwide. Like, there are a multitude of different reasons why socialism or a more robust social state has not worked in Venezuela, but it obviously has been successful in other countries.
Like Zimbabwe, Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea,
the only reason.
Former Bulgaria, former Belarus,
Charlie,
East Germany, Soviet Union. Those were great test cases for socialism, right?
I'm glad that you know countries. I'm glad that you are demonstrating that despite our public education system, you are still knowledgeable on different countries. Stop naming countries and let me finish, okay? All right. So ridiculous, dude. At this point, you guys all have to be aware that this is a ridiculous notion, right? There are plenty of socialized countries around the planet. It's not just Venezuela. And also, let me tell you another thing, okay? When Nordic countries want to implement social democracies or socially democratic principles, it doesn't matter because the United States can't impose sanctions on them, and the United States can't go and bomb them. The United States can't implement coups in their countries, and look at that. It freaking works, dude. It works. Maybe we should stop meddling in foreign affairs all around the world and allow these countries to do whatever they want. Because you can virtue signal as much as you want.
I generally agree with a non-interventionalist.
You can talk about virtue signaling. Here's what's virtue signaling. Acting like you care about Venezuela. Acting like you care about the interests of Venezuela.
I do care about Venezuela.
Yeah, if you did, you wouldn't be in support of an administration that is trying to put sanctions on Venezuela, a country that is already crippled. Like, it's a corrupt government. I'm sure there's an authoritarian element to it. I'm not the biggest fan of Maduro either. But you can't sit here and be like, oh, Venezuela, just to talk about socialism when your fellow men and women, your fellow brothers and sisters are dying in this country and you want to stop socialized medicine from happening here. All right.
So so you're drawing a connection with empathy and with my policy prescription to help people. And I would say
because the free market principles have never worked in socialized medicine. Obviously, that's the reason why we're here. Like, that's the reason why. That's the reason why it's 4 times.
Can you explain to me though that why people did everything they could to flee East Germany, to go to West Germany, people flee Havana, Cuba, from Miami, Florida, or they flee Venezuela for a free market system?
Why are they coming to America? Every immigrant's like, I'm coming to America for the free market system. Maybe the ones that you found. Like, what are you
they're
talking
also
about?
fleeing.
They're leaving violence
the
that
communist
we
dictatorships.
caused. They're leaving violence
Oh,
that we
no way,
largely were
that's
responsible
bullshit.
for, like the Honduran caravan, for example.
Let me ask you a question.
Who is implementing coups in these countries, Charlie? Who is funding right-wing paramilitary groups just because they're capitalist and they love the free market?
So tell me, since that's your general thesis, that the reason communism and socialism hasn't worked because of U.S. intervention. What U.S. intervention in Zimbabwe? Or what U.S. intervention? So the distinction between South Korea...
Only reason.
South
I'm not
Korea,
a dummy. I don't think there's a singular reason for an entire country to absolutely fail. Like, it's ridiculous
let me ask
to
you a
assume
question,
that it's because
South Korea
you're the only one who's saying
today
that.
because of U.S. intervention. North Korea lives in darkness.
It's not just because of U.S. intervention, Charlie. There are a multitude of reasons, obviously.
The fact that socialism is evil, it doesn't work, it has proper misproper incentives.
All of your reasons are just socialism is bad. Like, you're literally like, no, it's socialism.
No, and also that free market capitalism is the most proven, moral, and effective economic system ever.
Well, he's making the exact opposite. He's just saying capitalism is bad. The other thing I want to point out here is that before the U.S. was imperialistic, there were still countries that existed in the world, and there was more issues. World War I wasn't started by the United States. World War II wasn't started by the United States.
Never discovered.
Dude, it's
that's lifted more people out of poverty. That Western civilization is one of the greatest experiments in human history. That the life expectancy has gone nearly double in the last 100 years.
You do realize
that
you keep
global
repeating
poverty
your same
has
talking points, right? Like, I understand that. I understand that technological advancements are inevitable.
Repetition is the soul of memory, and I hope you can remember some of this stuff, so you can stop being a Marxist.
Yes. I understand that across the board, due to exponential growth and also due to technological advancements, which were created as an outcome of both publicly and privately funded research all around the world, that we are currently in a better state. I fully understand that, and I fully agree with that. Only one side is arguing that it is all just magical free market principles, and just like only one side here is arguing that an entire nation is crippled because they decided to adopt Marxist principles, when plenty of other countries have are successful social democracies, or at the very least have a robust economy and also more social spending, where citizens are happy and they don't have to be living in fear that their bosses, if they fire them on a whim, that they'll die.
Well, let's bring it back domestically then. Why is it the most murderous, hopeless, and poor cities in America are all run by Democrats?
What? What does that have to do with anything? Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're bad. What do you want me to say? Okay, sure.
Well, because your very policies are put on trial in Philadelphia and Chicago,
in Oakland,
like Rahm
Emanuel, the big socialist, who said
Milwaukee.
Chicago needed socialized medicine, and that's why there's gun violence.
Chicago's
Chicago's
already entertaining universal basic income, of which you support.
So you're saying they premeditatedly are having a lot of violence because they're going to implement universal basic income?
Well, they also have the strictest gun laws in the
argument,
country,
please,
but
one time.
you're a big fan of those too.
Please make a good argument one time.
No,
you can't just say...
Can you answer the question, though? Why is it that the most murderous...
Some of those Democrats are bad. What do you want me to say?
Well, maybe the ideas are bad, Hasan, and maybe the ideas don't work.
But what are the ideas? Like, do you really...
The ideas are high tax,
but they're not implementing socialist principles. That's
limiting
not
government freedom, not investing, not allowing entrepreneurs.
Name one socialist principle that Rahm Emanuel has tried to implement in Chicago.
The strictest gun laws in the country. Let's start with that. The fact that he doesn't allow school choice. The fact that he cracks down on the voucher system in Chicago. The fact that Chicago has the highest property taxes in the country. The fact that Chicago just instituted income tax.
But what are the ideas? Like, do you really...
The ideas are high tax,
but they're not implementing socialist principles. That's
limiting
not
government freedom. Not investing, not allowing entrepreneurs.
Name one socialist principle that Rahm Emanuel has tried to implement in Chicago.
The strictest gun laws in the country. Let's start with that.
I don't think strict gun laws are going to affect the local economy. I think just having a robust industry there that is supporting as a baseline so that other businesses can thrive is what's key and what's important. That's why a lot of cities will give tax breaks to larger companies, like if you're going to bring Apple into your region or Adobe into your area, because you're bringing in a lot of tax dollars locally. All of those people that are working for those companies are paying a lot of money in taxes, and they're also supporting the local businesses, the coffee shops, the local stores, the boutique stores, everything. So what you need to do is you essentially need to have a city that is set up like a mall where you have a bunch of anchor stores or anchor industries that then support the smaller local mom and pop shops.
The fact that he doesn't allow school choice, the fact that he cracks down on the voucher system in Chicago, the fact that Chicago has the highest property taxes in the country, the fact that Chicago just instituted income tax. These are all quote-unquote progressive ideas. Chicago is more bankrupt.
Are you against
hopeless.
all taxation? Can we just get this out of the way?
No, I think we should have lower taxes. And thanks to Donald Trump, we have the lowest tax rate in 60 years.
Give me a number, because like I never understand this. Because it's always like, I love deregulation, I love lowering taxes. Like just making these declarative statements might sound great because the tangible impact of it is not necessarily immediate, especially when it comes to tax cuts. But we see the consequences 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, like the erosion of the middle class in America. These are a consequence of Ronald Reagan era tax policies. This is crazy. All of our schools are failing, Charlie. We have
because of Democrat alliance.
Oh, come on. Yeah, Democrats like the ones in Oklahoma, right? That's where many
So you support school choice, Hasan?
days.
By the way, Sweden has school choice.
Yes, absolutely.
So Sweden has school choice.
That's what I want. I don't want to desegregate the schools. I actually don't support school. Like, we're so ridiculous, dude.
School choice
Stop
is a solution that can allow poor families to go to a better school. There's Democrat politicians and teacher unions that are preventing
like
poor families from sending their kids to better schools.
I'm trying to come to a conclusion with you about obvious problems that we have, but you are literally just regurgitating Republican talking points back at me without necessarily listening to anything that I'm saying.
I've said, Hasan?
I say, this is what's going on with our schools.
Disprove one thing I've said.
And then you go, do you hate choice? What does that have to do with what I'm saying?
I asked the question, Hasan. I didn't say you hate choice. I said, are you for school choice?
I said, do you hate choice?
School choice.
Okay, do you hate school choice?
Do you support school choice?
It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous question because you
No, it's actually Florida implemented school choice and went from 25th ranked in education to second ranked in education in the country. School choice works and it helps the least of these.
You're doing it again.
Which I know
You're
you care
literally
about.
like a politician, nonstop with talking points.
You mean saying facts?
But I gave you the answer.
Bother you, Hasan? Does evidence bother you?
Wait.
Numbers bother you?
No. Hold on, Charlie. Let's get back to reality for just a brief moment, okay?
Let's leave
the conservative sphere for a second and get back to reality. You make false assertions nonstop. Like, for example, the fact that Democratic policies are the reason why Oklahoma's school system has failed, when there's literally in certain districts, there's schools for 4 days. Like, what are you talking about? It's a consequence of underfunding these school systems, and that is inherently anti-socialist. If liberals are doing it, then they're also anti-socialist, and therefore they are wrong as well. And that's something that I want to talk about here. Look, this is why I came in and said, right now, the biggest problem in our country, from my perspective, is the fact that we don't look at socialism as if it's something that could potentially help us, but because of years and years of propaganda, and also very, very...
Could it be that the schools are underfunded because there's not enough tax revenue coming in, because there's not enough industry there, there's not enough business there, there's not enough business activity there? That's the whole premise of the Laffer curve. A Laffer curve is just, as your tax rates go up, eventually you start having a negative impact on the growth and the profitability of businesses. Therefore, they create less profits and thus less taxes.
Very talented mouthpieces like Charlie here, and I will admit, he's very good at disseminating conservative agitprop. Okay, because of that, and because of the lack of supposedly inside of our liberal institutions, the lack of education surrounding Marxist theory only at the highest levels, that people genuinely assume that socialism is a bad thing and not necessarily something that can help us, something that can save us. These are popular policies, you guys. You guys are advocating against your own best interests. You're advocating against your own well-being. When you talk about free market principles, you're essentially saying, look, it's fine if private companies can do whatever they want because private corporations are essentially privatizing tyranny, okay? They are unelectable, they are unaccountable, and this mythological free market understanding hasn't saved you at all. What happens when the free market fails? What happens when there are natural barriers of entry and the government obviously has to step in and subsidize? What happens? Like, we have socialism,
like affirmative action policies.
We only have socialism for the wealthy, and we have some socialism for the very poor.
Okay.
What we need to do is bring that back and have socialism for everyone. For example, Medicare for all would be a good place to start.
Okay. So
there is no answer you can give me to what will happen when automation wipes out the labor force with artificial intelligence. Socialism, whether you like it or not, some variation of that already exists in our country, but some variation of that will make you deeply uncomfortable will inevitably happen. So it's really silly. You can yell about the free market and how great it is, and also the free market's great because my dad is wealthy is not an argument that you can make anymore, okay? There are people that are suffering in this country.
So Hasan, why don't you give 95% of your money away and go live on a commune?
Do you really think that that's how it works? Do you really think
Why
that's how it
not?
works?
Go
This is as
live
silly.
what you preach.
Look,
Because every single
this is as
you
silly.
talked uninterrupted for 5 minutes. Hasan, let me
Okay,
finish.
go ahead. Sorry, you're right. You're right.
I live
You're right.
what I practice.
Make
I'm
your
a free market
ridiculous
capitalist.
tweet,
I
point.
employ people. I took a risk. I have my own startup business. Every single day, I practice what I preach. He wants other people to contribute to what he considers to be a good idea, what he considers will make the world a better place. That you
Okay.
have the freedom to go live as a socialist. Go do it, Hasan. What's stopping you?
Okay,
right.
so here's why
And
this
we'll
is
have to-
ridiculous.
this is
And
the
the last point,
this is the last
I will
point.
make is
Okay.
this. Here's why that conversation is absolutely preposterous. If I gave away the measly earnings that I had and gave away 95% of
How much do you make,
that
Hasan?
wouldn't necessarily even push the needle. I will be very honest. It's really embarrassing, especially because my boss is sitting right there. I make $60,000 a year, okay? And that's a really good salary, but it's not like what Ted Cruz's wife was talking about the other day when she said $174,000 salary a year. It's not like we're gonna buy a second home anytime soon, but that's besides the point, okay? You're trying to attack me, which is ridiculous, like asking me what my salary is. Sure, I'll reveal it willingly.
You brought it up in context. I'm asking, why don't you live like a socialist?
Okay.
Go live like a socialist.
The point is larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Cenk. I live as a
Hey,
capitalist.
hey,
okay? I live what I believe.
No.
What do I do?
Where'd he
I
go?
get charity every single year.
Hold on.
What's my salary?
Charlie,
Less than his.
Charlie, take
Come on,
a seat.
Cenk,
Cenk.
let's go.
Charlie,
What are you doing? Sit.
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Psycho?
All right, no. Take a seat. You're gonna take a seat. You're gonna take a seat over
Oh
here.
my God.
What's my salary?
All right.
Oh, ridiculous. All right, behave, everyone. Jesus
Okay.
Christ.
Okay.
I practice what I
Hey,
preach,
hey,
Cenk.
Charlie.
You
Stop.
do not practice what you
Stop.
preach.
Charlie.
All right, hold on. Last point.
You don't want to give him the attention.
Your boss is sitting right there. I make $60,000 a year, okay? And that's a really good salary, but it's not like what Ted Cruz's wife was talking about the other day when she said $174,000 salary a year. It's not like we're gonna buy a second home anytime soon, but that's besides the point, okay? You're trying to attack me, which is ridiculous, like asking me what my salary is. Sure, I'll reveal it willingly.
You brought
But
it up in
listen.
context. I'm
No,
asking,
no,
why don't you live
hold
like a
on,
socialist?
Okay.
Go live like a
The point is
socialist.
larger. The point is larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Cenk.
guys.
I live as a
Hey,
capitalist,
hey,
okay? I live what I believe.
No.
What do I do? I get charity every single year.
Hold on.
What's my
Charlie,
salary?
Charlie, Charlie.
Less than his.
Charlie, take
Come on,
a seat.
Cenk, let's go.
Charlie,
What
take
are you doing? Sit.
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Psycho?
All right, no. Take a seat. You're gonna take a seat. You're gonna take a seat over
Oh
here.
my God.
What's my salary?
All right.
Oh, ridiculous. All right, behave, everyone. Jesus
Okay.
Christ.
Okay.
I practice what I
Hey,
preach,
hey,
Cenk.
Charlie.
You
Stop.
do not practice what you
Stop.
preach.
Charlie.
All
Drag
right,
queen.
hold on. Last point.
This guy is loving it.
You don't want to give him the attention here.
Everyone, quiet
35,000
down.
donors
Quiet down.
across
Quiet
the
down.
country, my
Last
friend
point. Last
Cenk.
point.
We are funded by the grassroots of this country. You can try to demagogue it all you want.
Okay. Can I finish my point?
All right.
Less than Hasan's. You
Hold
can
on.
check it yourself.
Hold on.
Charlie.
Let me finish my point.
All right.
Right? We're having a reasonable discussion, right? We're here. We're talking to one another. Let's stop screaming at one another, including those of the Young Turks who obviously don't pay me enough. So, so here's what I was trying to say. Okay. We like to make ourselves feel comfortable by like implementing certain environmental policies. For example, like the straw ban in California, which is largely ridiculous because it lowers 0.006% of the plastic in the ocean. This is just simply to make ourselves feel comfortable when 100 companies are responsible for 71% of the carbon emissions. Like, it's ridiculous to think that we are going to have any sort of positive change if I go out and I live in a upstate New York like collective. Obviously, I'm fighting so that everyone can at least see that I'm coming at this not from a partisan place, not from a partisan place at all, but from a place where I'm looking at our problems in this country and trying to find solutions that will help every single American.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who do you think won the debate? Who do you think had good points, bad points? I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.